Hi, I'm Glenn Knockwood, and this is Keeping It Balanced, the show about what people do to keep their medicine wheel balanced. This is part 2 of Barb Sylvester's story of resiliency and how she's thriving as a missing and murdered Indigenous women survivor.
So my mother, Ninian Marshall, was murdered when I was a baby. As a MMIW, they call them MMIW survivors, murdered and missing Indigenous women survivors. How I came to join the group was through a conversation I actually had with Kathy Martin. And I didn't consider myself, and I think only people in general try to do that automatically. They minimize their level of pain, I think is how I've done it. It took a couple conversations for her to get me to switch how I was looking at this whole situation, that I am the daughter of someone who has been murdered. I felt like my level of my healing journey was far further along than most people's, and because it was new pain for a lot of people, and mine had, I've had 40 years to kind of analyze, cope, strategize, all those things that you kind of look at when you're the product of a murdered loved one. I even looked at myself compared to my own siblings, that I believed that they were suffering more and that I should be suffering less, because I had a stepmom who took care of me and raised me for whatever reason. And this is all in my own head. Nobody was making me think that way, but I did that early on, to the point, like I even remember sending my sister flowers on the anniversary of our mother's death. Funny how my mind worked that way. And then Kathy trying to explain to me that I'm equally still the daughter of someone who's murdered, just like my other siblings. It doesn't matter whether it was I had 1 day or 2 months or they had 20 years. I started to look at my involvement in and around MMIW and how I could how I'm going to participate in it. Initially I felt a sense of guilt. I feel like I've had a great life, and so this whole idea of survivor versus thriving, because I had said I don't want to be just a survivor. I want to be more than that. My own idea was that my mom didn't get to have the rest of her life. My mom didn't get to watch even me grow up, and myself in particular, her last baby that she had, she missed all of that. She missed having the blessing of being part of her grandchildren's lives, which I'm blessed with. I got to have 6 years already with my grandson. She didn't get to have that. And so I early on started feeling like I have to live my best life not for her, but in particular, kind of like, because those things were robbed of her so early, I felt like all the days and years that I get to have beyond the year that, even particularly I found beyond the year that she lives, like she was 37. So every year after 37, every day after 37, I feel more and more blessed that I've been able to fulfill, like in my mind, the things that she didn't get to have, like my grandson and having memories. And I've geared my whole life around making sure that the things that I didn't get to have, like in terms of her memory and these special events, I went over and beyond to give my kids like the best memories of it, to the point I didn't even realize that those are parts of the trauma-induced behaviors, that because nobody's really gotten therapy for having a parent being murdered until recently. Like those years, it's kind of like one of those things that was kind of like pushed to the side. Oh yeah, And I even didn't tell people that she was murdered. I told them that she died. So it was an easier thing to do than start having to explain somebody killed her and all of those factors, the trial and who it was. And society is a really good at re-victimizing people. So I learned really early on that, and I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just the society's misperception about when people die. And I think it's happening even to current day, but particularly hers. In my mom's case, they'd ask me things like, was she drinking? Or where was she? Like, why was she out? And, things like that. And I thought, does it matter if she was or not? Like, and I learned to quickly close that chapter and close that door. And so I was protecting her, because I felt like someone had killed her. No one protected her to the point, she's beaten to death, that I'm going to protect her memories, so I'm going to protect her story. And I was very keen on those early on to protect her, and I did. And I was very, very selective about who I disclosed that part of my life to, by protecting her image, protecting who she was. And as we're learning now, it's more and more, we see it a lot that people tend to re-victimize victims. What were they wearing? Like that's a factor. Like, did it matter what my mother was wearing? Like, did it give someone the right to kill her because she dressed a certain way or looked a certain way or acted a certain way, and all those things that society likes to do. So being part of that, the changing how I became more than just a survivor was part of the thriving aspect of it. Trying to make sure I was available for my kids, making fabulous memories, choosing my lifestyle, things like trying to stay away from addictions, trying to do a lot of those things that tend to put people in a downward spiral. So I try to stay away from a lot of those paths if I could. Not that I'm not perfect by any means. I've made mistakes. We've all done that. That's part of being human. But also being very cognizant of it very early on, that I wanted to live a certain way and not fall into a lot of the habits and patterns that a lot of people tend to do, especially if they come from circumstances like that. Being, in my case, a product of someone's parent being murdered. When Nora Bernard was murdered here in Truro, it was shortly after we came here. So she was probably one of the first people that I knew very well that was murdered. Like, I knew her well. She was somebody that spoke Mi'kmaq, actually. She was a residential school survivor. So we were able to have those conversations when I first came here, because I was somebody that was new to her. I was fluent, so I was able to have those conversations. And I remember, the post after, and trying to be as supportive as I could to some of her family members, that because I knew their pain was just beginning. Like, it was day one of their journey, and mine had already been 30 some years at that stage. But also I had the freedom and I had the lived experience to be able to say, to someone I know, not that our stories are identical, nobody's are, but I had that freedom and liberty to be able to say, I know what you're going through. I'm actually, at that stage of the game, I hadn't even really, I was very selective about who I told, and I had disclosed to some of their family members that my mother was murdered. And being able to offer that kind of comfort in an odd way, not that you want to ever be part of this group. Nobody ever wants to be part of the MMIW group or any other type of group where you lose loved ones, but being very few people at that time who were actually part of a survivor story of someone's mother having been murdered. And I remember that one particular for Nora's son, because he was so raw at the time. I wanted to be the example of the post. This is what, 30 years from now, you might be in my shoes. I can't say that he would be or they wouldn't be, but trying to give them that hope that they're, seeing past the raw pain that was there at that time, and being able to help someone in their own journey of MMIW. I was very aware of it early on, and even in that particular case, I had given her son, Jason, a ribbon shirt, and I had instructions with it. I said, I got you this ribbon shirt for two reasons. And I said, one was, there'll be a time where you're going to have to stand in your mother's space or her place. So this ribbon shirt is something I want to give you that's going to represent her, because it was from her Sully Day, that you're going to put this shirt on, you're going to put it on, and you're going to wear it in her honor, because she can't be here, but you're going to stand there in her place for her. The second part of that was to help him, but was also trying to have him think past today, but also not in a sense, just in the sense that I'm a reminder of the future, that that he probably can't even fathom at this point. But he did end up eventually wearing that shirt. Can't remember what it was, but posthumously I think she might have been honored in some way or shape or fashion. I knew that I wanted to be part of the thriving side of MMIW. Not that it doesn't come without pain, it doesn't come without any of those things. You know, like next week will be different. Next week will be her anniversary, so I'll have a different week, I'm sure, leading up to that. I typically do, and the day of. I'm also always trying to think about the more successes I have in terms of me as a person. I feel like I've honored her in different ways, because, you know, no mother wants to ever feel like their children are suffering or not doing well. As parents, we all want the best for our children, and, you know, when our children are struggling or our children are not doing well, you know, no parent ever feels good. So even though she's not here, I'm sure she's here in spirit. I know she is. But so every day and every week and every year that I'm doing better in any way, shape, or form, I feel like is what would give her the most peace and comfort, even though she isn't here. So that's how I tend to exist on a daily basis. And it's not always been that way. I've led up to that point of my life, but that's how I choose. It's a very active, proactive choice. People will say, you know, like whatever the case is, you know, like I've been with Darren for almost 30 years. That's a lot of it's choice. So my life has been about a lot of different types of choices, and, you know, some are good, some are bad, but you tend to keep the ones that are working for you. And that's how I've kind of looked at my journey up until this stage. And every day that I'm here longer, like I remember getting to 37, I had no vision beyond that point, but that's part of trauma. But when your life is driven by that age of when you've lost your parent, you kind of, that's the limit. And I remember like feeling after 37, I felt like I was a free person. Like, not that I was held hostage by any sense, but I was held hostage in my own mind about that age factor, that somehow I wouldn't make it past her age, because she didn't get to go past that age for circumstances, and circumstances are like that no matter what they are. I could have died probably when I was 19, but I mean, in my mind, 37 was the number I was aiming for. So once I made it past that, like 40 was fabulous. Like everyone's like, they cried when they were 40. I said, I thought 40 was fantastic to me. But, you know, for my own journey, my own story, every single one past 37 have been, to me, blessings. I want to be that age that I've got to spend another 50 years learning more meaningful. I've got to spend another 50 years being, you know, someone's schedule like Denver, and my kids having me for whatever, and having those opportunities that I didn't get to have because my mom wasn't here. Although I'm blessed with, you know, I was blessed to have a second mom, you know, who I adore, like, and she's, you know, she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. So, you know, I feel like I've been blessed in other ways too. I've been given other things that other people may not have been able to have, and I appreciate them. That's one of the things I'm very grateful for, is that I have an appreciation for how, you know, my own existence even. Like I'm grateful to even be at this age. I've had a couple of health scares with my own voice. I couldn't actually speak, and you know, took a couple of ambulance rides to the hospital with my throat closing. So your voice, you don't even realize how much impact your voice has until you don't have one. And I mean figuratively and physically. I didn't realize how much of my voice was my own healing, my own therapy all these years. Being able to have those conversations, those joyous times, those learning to, you know, becoming very fluent so that I can communicate even in Mi'kmaq and have those opportunities. But also figuratively, in a sense that I didn't realize, you know, my voice, losing my voice was going to affect other people besides myself. We take for granted our ability to communicate till you're unable to, well, voice-wise anyway, and how quickly things change when you're not able to speak or allowed to speak all day. And it was really life-altering for me, because then I realized my voice is impactful to other people. Because I'm an MMIW survivor, because I'm I'm more than that, I'm a thriver, because I'm able to navigate in both English and Mi'kmaq, because I'm able to articulate what I want to say, think, how well I'm able to integrate myself in any situation that I need to integrate myself in. I have, you know, like all those factors I didn't realize with MMIW, that some people don't have a voice. And I've seen it, I've been around tables and they're just either gaining their voices, or their voices are just, they're not at that stage yet to be that comfortable even speaking about it. And because everyone's on a different journey and a different stage of their journey, even from day to day. Like no two people's journeys are the same. I have 10 siblings. none of us had the same journey. None of us, because we were all at different stages of our lives when she died. And the post-death, all of those journeys are different. So I can't even say that my sisters and I have the same impacts, because we don't. None of us do, because none of us, we're all impacted differently. So being able to participate in MMIW with the other survivors I call them, like, you don't realize you have another family until you're not able to see them. And we felt this during COVID. I don't even really communicate with in any other form, or even travel in the same circles with them until we're together. And it's like your family, like your long lost family you haven't seen in a long time, and not being able to be with them we all felt it, and we actually all felt it when we got back together, because there's this comfort in being part of this, being in a circle of people that have been through much of the same things that you've been through, and some of them, and a feeling like you're in a safe place, because there's no one there that everyone's there and choosing to be there, and are there for almost the same reasons. You don't realize the bond that you've created over the years with these other families of survivors, because now it's we've all shared a lot of our experiences, and have been involved in each other's pain and suffering and all those things that come along with that. But then bouncing things off of one another, because it's not something you can talk every day to about other people about that don't know what you've gone through. There's this different kind of relationship and bond you have with people that are part of MMIW. It's very it's a group of you that have the same story, but quite different variations of it. And I was explaining to them most recently at the gathering about my kids having given me a gift of a painting. So in the painting is, my mother's in the painting, then me, my daughters, and my grandson. When I opened it, I looked at it, and it was like complete shock that I started to sob. I cried and cried, and it must have been a half hour I cried straight. I'm not somebody that's really that emotional. I cry here and there, but never to that extent. I actually analyzed and tried to figure out why I had cried for so long, and then I realized it was seeing something that I never thought was possible. So I said, what I realized, the tears, part of the tears and the pain was the grief of reliving or grieving something that I never thought could exist. So it was grieving what I had lost, in a sense of that she would never be in my family picture, but seeing it on a piece of paper. That's what it was. That was part of the, all these years later, 48 years later, to cry like that is, when you think you've done well, and you're a thriver in that you're in your own description, but realizing that things like this are parts of trauma that you don't even really know are still there until you're faced with it again. Like, so then I probably have seen people's family picture, so look at the 4 generations, like that. And then all of a sudden it's in front of me. So that's what it was. That's the best it's ever going to be. So that's where those tears came from, was the twofold part of something that was part of my own trauma of her being taken so early in life that she would never be part of a family. Because as long as I've ever seen multi-generational pictures, I always said, maybe I'll get to have a great grandson and have a multi-generational picture, but I only saw it from myself forward. So then when that happened, it was like this amazing thing to be able to see it, but also grieve it, because I didn't really grieve it, because I've never been really, other than seeing someone else's painting, it was like, and put it aside and moved on with your day. This was an actual reality of what couldn't have never happened, but it's on paper, and you get to have the next best things. I shared that with the group, and I thought, they understand that, because they're probably all experiencing it in different forms themselves, and not realizing, because it could be, a daughter, or it could be, like now one of the other mothers, it's a daughter that's died. So now she has the grandchildren. So now it's going to be her and the grandchildren, and the daughter's not going to be in it. So something like that, they have that full understanding why I cried for so long and so hard about it. So MMIW and my voice they go hand in hand, and I didn't realize that my language is also a third component of all of this, is being able to be able to communicate with not just in English but in Mi'kmaq too, with the other survivors that are Mi'kmaq. So being part of it as a whole, I think, is all make me see things differently, makes me see, appreciate things more. Having my voice back and knowing I'm not going to die from it. So being able to have that as my of course your ultimate goal, but two is to be able to communicate. Is we take it for granted until it's gone. So I want to be able to have my voice to participate in MMIW. I want to have my voice to advocate, even advocate for myself. MMIW at my testimony became a factor when I was ready to do my testimony, and having someone there that couldn't understand what I was saying. And I'm very good at articulating myself. I don't have a problem speaking. So I couldn't understand why this lady couldn't understand what I was saying. So I thought my voice, and I even said it at that time, I said, man, I feel bad for the other survivors who may not be at that stage of very comfortable speaking in public, very comfortable, I don't have a shameful bone in my body. So my voice being a voice for other people, I didn't realize was actually a factor, because I do tend to speak for other people when I feel like they can't speak for themselves. And my mother was one of them in that particular moment about at the testimony, and making sure that I'm still talking on her behalf when I was speaking to the lady I was speaking to. So keeping in mind that my mom doesn't have a voice, she's not here to defend herself. So that's my job. My job is to defend her, and I'll defend her at all costs, and her reputation, whatever the circumstances around it, because I wasn't in my state of being, I wasn't gonna let anybody re-victimize her. So having a voice, literally and figuratively, are two big things for me, because I feel like they're benefiting myself, they're benefiting other people, language, they're benefiting, but I've learned that it doesn't, my voice and my existence and my whatever are not, it's not if I'm not somebody's bidui, I always say I'm not somebody's bidui, I'm their coffee, it's still cool. I get it. Like I don't hold like any why I'm not out to make everyone like me, but I'm out to teach as much as I can, or help as much as I can. Those are where I feel like my life, things that you do in life, some people do it through volunteer work, some people do it through other ways, but mine seems to be through language and being having a voice and being able to express however way I express things to help people move through life. That's what I feel like, that's my contribution. And I feel like my mom, knowing what I know about her and have heard about her, she was somebody that also did her own fair share of helping in other ways. She helped people, give them a place to sleep, I'll give them a couch, whatever the case was, or food, or all those things, or whatever she was able to have. So I feel like in my journey of becoming very good at thriving post her death, and then also like language reclamation are key things in my what are you leaving behind, is what I always say. What do you want to be remembered for? Because when someone dies, that's the first thing they talk about, is what impact did they leave, what do you remember the most about them? And so that's where I think about those things. What do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered for being more than just a survivor. I want to be remembered for doing well at it. Not that I had any particular rule book around it, or a guidebook, but how I navigated it for myself, moving through life, along with the people that were in my circle. I had a great circle of people that are all part of that. They're all influences in all shapes and forms of who I am. My mother brought me into the world, but the people that she left me with are part of the rest of my journey as well, because they're contributing factors to everything that I am today, are all because of the people that I've allowed into my circle, or were part of my circle. They've all been influences in ways that are to do better, or to learn from. All your experiences are all what do you learn from it, and how are you gonna do it better to make you better. Knowledge is power, so the more knowledge you have, the better we're supposed to become at making those decisions going forward for ourselves.
How often do you guys meet as a group?
It depends on what's going on. Like COVID changed a lot of things. Up until the testimony that everyone did, not everyone did, but ones that wanted to do testimony. I've been invited to quite a few gatherings, and not all of them I could attend, but I do try to make it to most of them. I feel like as a whole, we help each other. No matter how few people are there or how many are there, we're all there for the same purpose of finding healing and finding a safe space. My story is a lot older than most people's, but we have some that are brand new. We have people that are still missing, that are at these places, whose children are still not found, or their siblings, or whatever the case is. So I always say we all have a different story and a different whatever. Like mine is, at least for me, I know where my mom is. I don't have those unknowns that some people are still living with. Like their children aren't even found yet. So being able to participate and being able to go to them, being able to offer what I can to the group, but also they're healing me at the same time with that, like, shared experience, that shared camaraderie, that shared, even if it's not even, nobody's even sharing, but even laughing. And sometimes there are some people are laughing and crying at the same time. And I know that any one of us at that table might not be there the next time. And this past gathering, somebody was not there. Cookie Maloney had passed away. She was at the last one, and I had said, I remember the last gathering because we laughed so hard. We had laughed so hard that people were crying over a joke we had made out of painting. It was just a painting, her initials are Linda Maloney, LM. And we had joked that her painting looked like a Maud Lewis painting. So when she had signed her signature, she put LM. And I said, look at Linda Maloney. She's not giving up this Maud Lewis. She even put her Maud Lewis initials backwards. And she laughed so hard, she was crying. And we had talked about this at the gathering, that had we not gone to the last gathering, we would not have had that fun laugh, type of experience. And now she's not here. We gave her, we added to her joy and being able to bring laughter too, in times of pain as well. So having each other to, in the good times and the bad times, I feel like that's how we operate. Because not all of it's always going to be pretty, and not all of it's always going to be laughter. But as Mi'kmaq people in general, we tend to combine all those emotions sometimes at once, and that's okay too, because laughter's healing and crying's healing. They're both healing. And one of the other members had shared their mother will not be at the next gathering. The rawness of that pain. And she said it herself too, that having each other, we don't realize how valuable it is to us till somebody's going to be gone, or somebody's not going to be here. At the last gathering, I had chosen to bring one of my daughters, and so had another. And we even had this discussion, and because it became an issue that nobody had saw, why haven't we brought our children at this stage? Because when you lose somebody, you tend to work life by yourself, very individually, even though you think you're doing it holistically with everyone else. We're trying not to project our own pain on our loved ones. So by not bringing them, we think that we're not going to project that pain onto them, but we have to realize at the same time, and I did too, and I said, that's her grandmother, but we're just so used to protecting the rest, or protecting everyone else from not having the experience that you had, you tend to leave people out. So as they're aging, I have to remember that, they're grown-ups too. They can handle some of this. So that's the first time I brought one of my kids to a gathering. Yeah. And it was very purposeful too. And I made that conscious decision. It's also their story, because I've been so good at protecting my mother's story and holding that tight to myself. I didn't even realize that I wasn't including my own children. As an MMIW group, we're realizing we don't have to do it alone. So, and also letting them in to participate is giving them the opportunity to heal with you. So I thought that was a great conversation that we end up having as a group about it. And why we chose that one in particular, because we all seem to have chosen the same event, but we think it was induced by COVID. COVID induced the, you don't know who's going to be here tomorrow. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think it induced that if I don't introduce my kids to this group, they're not going to be comfortable coming to it. So partially is that now starting to make them familiar with this group, and because now, you know, they're my children, so they're a piece of me, and bringing that piece along to introduce to the group. You don't realize they're part of the bigger picture sometimes, because I became myself anyway, very narrow-minded about that, protecting my mom's story and protecting my loved ones from it, so that I didn't realize that by letting kids in to participate is, you know, you're 10 steps ahead of the game. If it ever disappeared, I'd be really I think I'd be really sad. Having those opportunities to gather, they have to happen. They can't disappear. That form of healing together, especially as Ulnu people, because we are all Ulnu in that group, there's nothing you could ever get from sitting in a counselor's chair. There's more than just having the commonality of having a murdered parent. You have the commonality of being of the same tribe, like the same Ulnu. There's not mainstream impacts in some of these, a lot of these cases, because a lot of these cases are people that knew the people that murdered them. So it's more impactful than a random stranger.
Yeah.
We're very tied to our communities. We're very tied to the people in our communities, and the traumas that are there with Ulnu MMIW in particular are more than just one trauma. They're multiple kinds. So having that group of commonality is really therapeutic for all of us, because we don't have to explain the other aspects of the traumas, because we all know what they are. And it was very similar to me trying to explain at the testimony to a psychologist about her story. All the Ulnu understood exactly what I was saying. She was the only one that didn't. So then these are the types of experiences for people that are post trauma anyway, need to not be re-traumatized in another format, because, you know, in my case, I felt like I was being re-traumatized by this woman who didn't understand what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was speaking very good English, but she couldn't grasp it until the other Ulnus came, and I said, am I not like articulating this? Like, do you guys understand what I'm saying? And the Ulnus were like, yep. And one of them was even be able to say, this is what Barbara's trying to say, boom, 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 boom. And it was just a cultural difference. And she's a paid psychologist. She got a degree in psychiatry, but sometimes it's more than just your psychiatry aspect of healing that's that you can't find in any any mainstream psychologist office that you walk in. Sometimes therapy is also in the commonality of your own people and the culture that you come from. MMIW, I don't know what I would do if they ever disappeared.
Before I go, I want to show you my appreciation by giving you a pair of earrings that my friend Catherine Tomer.
Oh, okay.
People know her as Guy Tomer.
Oh yeah.
But they're red dresses.
These are beautiful.
And also, I'd like to give you an offering to say thank you very much, and I appreciate everything you do.
I'll wear them with pride.
This is how the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Group helps Barb keep her balance.
It's a support group of people that are there for the same purpose. We always leave feeling better than when we went in, feeling like you're not alone. Yeah. It's like this unwritten family connection that's there. Sometimes it's just having the comfort of the people. Their presence is enough.